To paraphrase Charles Dickens, it is the best of times, it is the worst of times. We live in strange days full of contradictions and paradoxes. Things are not all as they may seem. We have luxuries that have never existed before, amazing amounts of technology which humans have never had access to before. More has been resolved, but we are still conflicted. We have new ways to find happiness and new ways to find misery. We have more ways to connect with each other, but there is more societal conflict, especially in the current media landscape. Over the past few years, we have seen a rise in conflicts, from the proclamation of safe spaces at Yale to attacks over political allegiances in regards to notable elections of the past year. Now we are even starting to see open battles taking place, such as the recent Battle of Berkeley. I've been giving this a lot of thought lately. For some time, I've been reflecting on how this came to be. In times of great difficulty, it is important to understand where we came from in order to navigate through where we are going. Recently, when I was originally researching a video I planned to make about YouTube censorship issues, I came across this article from Buzzfeed. I was flicking through it and noticed one particular paragraph at the end that struck me as very odd. It got stuck in my thoughts and I ended up giving it a lot more attention. The article in question was published by Buzzfeed on the 1st of February 2017. It was the final paragraph which got my attention. One sentence in it describes three particular YouTubers as being part of the alt-right. The three named are, in order written, Sargon of Akkad, Thunderfoot, and Blair White. At first I wrote this off as a typical example of BuzzFeed's usual misrepresentations, outright lies and deceptive narratives. To me, these three YouTubers are by no means part of the alt-right or even explicitly associated with it, so it seems silly to use them as exemplars of it. After a little bit of extra thought, I came to the conclusion these names had been chosen deliberately as part of a more sinister message intended. After some further research, my suspicions were confirmed. In order to shed some light on one part of what led to the frenzied conflicts on a university campus, a centre for learning and enlightenment, I'm going to go over this article. I will start with the three people described as being part of the alt-right. Firstly, Sargon of Akkad. Including him is quite simply factually incorrect. I know this because I've been watching his videos for some time. I've often heard him express his opinions about the alt-right. In fact, he was the person I learnt the term from. He talked about the alt-right during a live stream in early 2016, in which he was very critical of them, as he remains so to this day. Thunderfoot is the strangest inclusion. To say he is part of the alt-right is ludicrous. To even name him in this article, given its anti-Trump attitude, is insane. For those of you who do not know, Thunderfoot has become something of a pariah amongst many YouTubers because he was against Trump and continues to deride him even now. During last year, his subscriber count almost halved, due largely to his views in opposition of many of his subscriber base. At first it might look like his inclusion could be a mistake, that maybe they did not fact-check, instead relying on incorrect testimony. On reflection, I suspect an ulterior motive. It is because of his association with Gamergate, in particular, his stance against social justice warriors and the false heroes of contemporary feminism. Groups such as these have been encouraged and protected by Buzzfeed, very rarely giving attention to any antisocial, disruptive, hateful, or criminal activities engaged in by the feminists or SJWs. As for Blair White, I doubt it is true to call her a part of the alt-right. For all I know, she may have said she is. Quite frankly, I don't care because it is not the key part we should pay attention to here. Whilst reading this article, you will have noticed the three names are contained in the text as hyperlinks. The first two will open the channel pages on YouTube for Sargon and Thunderfoot. In other words, you will see a snapshot revolving around their most recent uploads. Although in Sargon's case, he still has a pinned video that I'm sure Buzzfeed would not want you to see. But ultimately, there is nothing that could even remotely look like evidence of either of these two YouTubers being part of the alt-right. Not when the article was first published or any time since. However, in the case of Blair White, clicking on her name will directly open a specific video of hers. It is entitled, "Trump is your president, get over it, inauguration rant." Why direct to a video in her case and not her whole channel? At first glance, I thought it was just a silly way of using her as an example because of the obvious association of the alt-right with Donald Trump. I do not know how many people would bother to click on the link, but it seems reasonable anyone who has read this far in the article would already be primed to have a negative reaction to what they see if they do click on the link. Interestingly, if they did, they'd basically be watching a pretty moderate video arguing the case for respecting the political process, dotted with a few of Blair White's trademark bitchy comments. In other words, she is hardly preaching hate or acting like a Nazi. Quite the contrary, she is being quite reasonable. Why would Buzzfeed bother using these names? And why include the links with their names? I expect we are led to think it is just a silly mistake to question this, but it looks far too exact to be dismissed out of hand. It's easy to think Buzzfeed is staffed by somewhat immature people with low standards in terms of both journalism and ethics. Is that enough to go on? I don't believe so. This is where the suspicion I mentioned earlier comes in. I know Buzzfeed is pretty crafty, so I did some more research, gave it some more consideration, and came to a different conclusion. To get a better understanding of the true intent of this article, it is best to consider some of the background of Buzzfeed. This article, and many others published by Buzzfeed, can look very different after considering the history of the site and the objectives it was built to serve. As a platform, Buzzfeed was created as an aggregator of other internet content based on algorithms specifically designed to create and steer said content into a more malleable form for corporations. It achieves this end by choosing which content, how much of it, and where it will be used. Take this quote from an article in the New Yorker magazine published in 2013. Peretti started Buzzfeed as a side project in 2006 in partnership with his old boss, John Johnson. But long before the Huffington Post was sold, he had shifted his attention to the newer project. Originally, Buzzfeed employed no writers or editors, just an algorithm to cull stories from around the web that was showing stirrings of virality. In return for functioning as a sort of early warning system, Buzzfeed persuaded partner sites to install programming code that allowed the company to monitor their traffic. The network now encompasses some 200 sites that serve 355 million users. This analytical capacity, which the company doesn't talk about much, has given Buzzfeed an enormous trove of data about what information people are reading and how they are sharing it. This is why one prominent New York digital media executive described Buzzfeed to me as a super big ad tech company with a journalism veneer. Peretti was selling a package of analytical tools which statistically extract correlations in large amounts of data. In the algorithms used, they are counting words and their relationships to other words. They then mathematically extract metrics to measure what people are most interested in and what they will engage with most. This means they are measuring content and looking at how everybody on the internet is interacting with it. Given this is done using the internet, they are able to do so in extremely fine-grained detail because of the sheer amount of data that is used. They can measure not only the content of what users are viewing, but also the relationships between different content. This is done by measuring the pages you view, when and on what you click, like, or subscribe, and what you may say in the comments. It can also extend to measuring who you associate with and how you interact with people on the internet. Buzzfeed itself clearly states this in its privacy policy. When you use the services, you are consenting to the collection, transfer, manipulation, storage, disclosure, and other uses of your information as described in this privacy policy. The company does not merely measure what works. It also has to be able to provide a formula to push selected content as well. This is how their marketing tools become valuable to its clients in order to make a deeper impact and provide a more effective product to their customers. The essence of Buzzfeed's product is the means of persuading people to believe what they are told. This ranges from getting people to believe in purchasing their client's product and services to getting people to believe they are consuming truthful and useful content. Buzzfeed effectively becomes the snake oil salesman of the information age. Most likely, the New Yorker article was written in conjunction with a big promotional push to extend BuzzFeed's range in the market. Around 2013, when this article was published, BuzzFeed became a profitable enterprise, going from a net loss of just over $4 million in 2012 to a net profit of about $7 million in 2013. This suggests that this is the point where BuzzFeed was able to sell its services to enough companies to become the driving force it intended to be. In order to do so, they must have matured their platform to provide sustainable returns for investors and clients. Therefore, they must have mastered the techniques they had intended to do so and could prove it by providing material results. It is also of interest that 2013 was the year in which the SJW movement first began to permeate popular culture to an extent it had never fully realized in the past. It thus began spreading amongst broader forms of media, both in terms of new internet formats as well as traditional forms such as television and newspapers. BuzzFeed not only wanted to work with the content existing already on the internet, but it wanted to create special kinds of content. In particular, it wanted to create new memes. In common usage, memes are images and videos generally of a humorous nature which spread and become well known on the internet. However, the original, more formal definition is an idea, behavior, style, or usage that spreads from person to person within a culture. The term was originated by Richard Dawkins as an analogy with genes and evolution, where culture is made up of smaller units called memes, which are passed along from person to person. Elsewhere in the already mentioned New Yorker article, it reads, Peretti wanted to fabricate memes, and after years of experimentation, he built BuzzFeed as a shop to do so. He didn't do it for the news, or the movie gossip, or the cute pictures of pandas. Beneath BuzzFeed's cheery gloss lies a data-driven apparatus designed to figure out what makes you click. Peretti is aware that if he really has divined that secret, if he can reliably manufacture at mass scale content you will want to share, he will have developed an asset of immense value. The immense value in question is undoubtedly the ability to influence society through affecting new ideas, behaviors, styles, and usages, which would spread from person to person. The idea of the meme was much debated for many years after Dawkins coined the term in the 1970s. Since the advent of mass usage of the internet through the World Wide Web, this debate has shifted from whether or not memes exist to asking how they work and what they are. Keep in mind that the media has been creating memes for a long time already. For example, doing so in the form of spinning out narratives. One commonly used strategy is to start a narrative, see how it goes, then if it is popular, keep running with it. If a narrative falls flat, they just drop it and pick up a new story they can spin out over extended periods of time. If the narrative is successful, they then find another way to apply the same concepts to another story. This is why so much of the sensationalist stories we have heard are most often repetitious and similar to other stories we have already witnessed before. Unfortunately for the mainstream media, this is a clumsy approach, especially when pitted against the extraordinary power of the internet to spread and propagate interesting content. BuzzFeed is a response to this. Thus, they created a system to accelerate the ability to find workable narratives and then perpetuate them. Before a new narrative or a meme has already formed and spread, data stores recording information from clicks, likes, and shares are already available to analyze and predict the popularity of any new content. BuzzFeed itself was not based on printing originally written journalism. Instead, it deliberately aimed to create viral content based on what it already knows people are interested in, and based on what it already can predict will be more successful in terms of persuading people to believe and act on prearranged directives. Initially, this appears to have been intended to serve marketing and advertising. However, it has clearly become used in conjunction with political and social agendas, especially as they moved into being a news media platform. Buzzfeed has been able to build a platform for forming echo chambers where limited content and ideas are repeated, while simultaneously fooling viewers and readers into a false sense of security about how well informed they are. This has encouraged the SJW movement to grow, gather more momentum, and gain greater sympathy amongst the general populace, even going so far as to mobilize this movement to protect corporate interests through fighting bitterly to get Hillary Clinton elected to the presidency, an outcome which we now know did not come to pass. In the same manner that old-style media was used to create public approval or disapproval, BuzzFeed is able to influence the public discourse by subversive persuasion of readers, out of which it has managed to garner a cult-like core group that act like ideological stormtroopers dedicated to whatever ideology BuzzFeed is reiterating. By spying on the data underpinning internet usage, the platform has deliberately created frenzied levels of support which have snowballed into mass hysteria. Keep in mind that part of this process is them spying on an upcoming subset of YouTube content creators who have been delivering better content and have more appeal than the mainstream media. This includes the three names mentioned before and many, many others. Notably, most of the YouTubers they have slandered and smeared are people who are very critical of the ideology BuzzFeed has sold itself on and how they have gone about doing so. At this point, we can return to the BuzzFeed article in question. The text is part of the culmination of groundwork BuzzFeed has already done. They have extracted data from the internet and used it to predict what will be most effective towards creating persuasion, especially in terms of the desired outcome of BuzzFeed's agenda. The article is a nexus of the pro-SJW propaganda BuzzFeed has been cultivating for years. It runs in parallel to the narratives which mainstream media sites have been pushing by using Peretti's Meme Factory software, doing so in order to enhance their own hegemonic dominance over the public discourse. I'm going to run through key elements in this article. Whilst I do so, keep in mind some of the information I have already shared with you. The article starts with a headline associating Trump with Nazis. It is designed to grab the attention of anyone already hostile to Trump. This is a meme most people are already familiar with, as it was repeated often during the election campaign. BuzzFeed has already pushed this as a simple exercise of building a bad association. The title also incorporates the notion of the good trolls, which is placed in quotation marks to indicate an opposition to the already established meme of trolls as horrible people on the internet who are harassing everyone. This is another meme pushed by BuzzFeed time and time again. The first few paragraphs detail the appearance of a pro-Trump prankster at Shia LaBeouf's anti-Trump art protest. It then moves into discussing the Discord chat app and how it is a hub for Trump supporters, the alt-right, white supremacists, and neo-Nazis. Another meme BuzzFeed has already worked on before. From this point on, there is little new information given to back up the claims of the story. Any signs of research or of supporting evidence are removed. We are told of attempts to harass Shia LaBeouf and anti-Trump protesters, once again reusing a meme from prior articles. Then we are informed of the heroes of the headline, the good trolls. These people are infiltrating Discord to hide in some of the most vile chat rooms on the internet, which is why they have to protect themselves from retaliatory harassment. At this point, the article starts to intimate there are real-world consequences away from the internet, by invoking the Holocaust in the form of a young woman quoted who is distantly related to Polish Jews, and who has no time for Nazis, who, of course, are the implied true meaning of the words alt-right. Thus we start to be told more about these brave anti-fascists as they fight the good fight. The article proceeds to describe the actions taken by these anti-fascists as they fight, At this stage of the article, the association of the Discord chat app, President Trump, and the alt-right with neo-Nazis becomes more blatant. There is one paragraph giving information about 2 Discord servers which aligns with Trump supporters. It contains 2 more hyperlinks, one of which redirects to a YouTube channel named after Trump, and the other to a mashup video on that channel. Another red flag to be waved before raging bulls. A few sentences later, and the tone shifts into a more serious one in the form of mentioning Nazi hunters. The protagonists of the article have gone from good trolls to anti-fascists to Nazi hunters. The quote does not clearly state that the person claims to be exactly that, but it does bring in a more serious element. Enough at least to ramp up the idea of disrupting fascist chat rooms mentioned in the following paragraph. Further on, we are given a hint that paranoia is dividing these extreme communities, and so they are trying to find ways of organising somewhere more private. This enhances the notion that the evil element in society is even harder to see. The following paragraphs detail more problems amongst the supposed Nazis. Claiming the havoc and documentation by the good trolls is effectively breaking up these communities. This invites the reader to believe the tide is already turning and it will be easy to fight this enemy. As the article comes close to finishing, we are told only someone who felt hated by society, a psychopath or sociopath, or someone raised in a belief like this could be alt-right. This quotes a source named only as Kindler, a source we are given no information about other than their dedication to the good fight. The name itself could be a meme used on purpose to inject the imagery of somebody willing to start a fire that would be started in order to further their own agenda, in this case, Nazi hunting. Kindler is described as having decided to take his anti-fascist activism offline, meaning that he intends to take his Nazi hunting out of the virtual world of chat rooms and into the very real world where hunting means actual physical violence enacted on one's prey, which by this stage it should be clear is anyone supporting Trump. More specifically, in this same paragraph he gives away his membership in Antifa, a group of radicals claiming to fight fascists. The article deliberately paints a picture of a society overrun by dark forces. It casts the alt-right as a bogeyman hiding out of sight that must be rooted out. We are told about the alt-right, about white supremacists, about the evils of Trump supporters. The article reads as if specifically intended to create a sense of fear in its readers. Against the evil forces, there are the benevolent good trolls, anti-fascists, Nazi hunters, and Antifa. The article creates an image of a bogeyman harassing people, threatening civil liberties and destroying society. A bogeyman spreading sexism, racism, hatred of women, and a return to the genocide of Hitler's Holocaust. The mention of chat rooms where bad people congregate emphasizes this. It emphasizes them as almost invisible, and thus delineates them from anybody the reader may actually know. It creates a blank slate upon which any negative association can be stamped. We are told to fear these dark forces and even be afraid of taking seriously anything said by alternative voices out there, such as the YouTubers named at the end of the article. People who are named in conjunction with the evil alt-right and described as a gateway to Nazism and all the evils stated explicitly or implicitly in this article. Not least of all, there is the meme of fighting back, of hunting the enemy. It is perpetuated throughout the article. It is suggestively placed in the title and recurs multiple times. At each iteration of the meme, it is further ramped up, such that by the conclusion it suggests actually going out and acting violently towards those who disagree. The second to last paragraph mentions young people being radicalized through memes. It is said as if applicable to the alt-right and the YouTubers, but it is more of a confession on behalf of Buzzfeed. It is this article, hiding in plain sight, which looks more like an act of radicalization. It reads like a call to violence and destruction, in the form of attacking anybody who disagrees with the social justice warriors. A call to violence and destruction which must be enacted immediately. And this is exactly what happened. On the same day of this article's publication, there was a riot at Berkeley University, where Milo Yiannopoulos was due to give a talk. Consider some facts about Milo. He is well known to be a Trump supporter. He has stood against the SJW movement. He was a high-profile figure in Gamergate, which Buzzfeed likes to refer to as a sexist movement comprising internet users hell-bent on attacking women from behind the anonymity of the internet. More erroneously, he has been described as a notorious troll. He has been described as the leader of the alt-right. He has been described as a white supremacist. He has been described as a Nazi, and therefore a fascist. All of these facts about Milo are represented in the article. All the memes used are aligned in direct opposition to what is known about him, whether it is true or not. Milo's lecture tour was conceived as a way to fight back against the SJWs and their influence amongst universities. This definitely threatens the narrative Buzzfeed has been perpetuating. The rioters themselves were primarily Antifa, the anti-fascist group mentioned by name at the end of the article. However, the crowd of protesters were also made up of many people who would be described as social justice warriors. People attending the lecture were attacked, pepper-sprayed and beaten. At least one person was rendered unconscious and beaten whilst motionless in the street. Property was destroyed, smashed up and set on fire, all whilst the rioters carried signs and placards declaring their hostility towards those they perceived as Nazis. One banner was even seen which declared war. At this point, you may well ask, is it possible that Buzzfeed really has influence to incite a riot? I have no solid single piece of evidence. Even so, what I have presented in this video is still of interest. It is up to us to make up our own minds and investigate this further if we so choose. At best, Buzzfeed has just gotten carried away with the narrative it has been spinning. At worst, they deliberately decided to run this article knowing that at least some part of their audience would engage in the riot, whilst having many others see the riot as a necessary evil. Either way, the methods of media sites need to be questioned. Either way, we know that they are creating mass hysteria, and this should be countered by reasoned, well-informed and common-sense questioning. A media company should not be engaging in fueling a fire that is endangering lives and undermining the political process. As for whether this article was a deliberate attempt to incite violence, I must say the coincidences are too much. The event itself was scheduled to start at 8 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time on the 1st of February. Crowds first started gathering in the afternoon, and by evening time, the violence started. By 7 p.m., the local police had declared the event cancelled. This article was published at 12:11 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. This was at the start of the same day, so by the time the riot happened, many of BuzzFeed's target audience would have read this article. Before dismissing this notion out of hand, keep several points in mind. 1. We know BuzzFeed has the ability through its platform to collect information about its audience. It also has the means to specifically spread articles through social media sites which target interested people, including anyone who may already be prepared to engage in violent protest. They have been recording information about people online who have already shown an interest in or sympathy with disrupting Milo's lectures. After this, they can depend on people sharing and repeating the same ideas. Therefore, word will spread across social media until enough people are talking about taking their fight to Milo's event. Although the article does not specifically name Milo or the scheduled appearance at Berkeley, it is entirely possible this information could have been spread independently in conjunction with it. In fact, I find it very suspicious that in the article, which is laden with so many memes about the alt-right, that the author would not also mention Milo by name. The omission of him is quite suspicious. 2. It is not necessary that they convince everybody of this, or even a majority. It is only necessary that they convince enough people to get the ball rolling. Only enough people are needed to be incited that are willing to assault people, set fires, and destroy property at the event. It is not too extraordinary that 1,000 people could be encouraged out of the millions who are either reading inflammatory media or will go along with somebody who is. Even then, it is noticeable from footage that those involved in the assaults and property damage are only a small portion of the sum total of people in attendance. 3. Inciting the riot is not just a matter of convincing the perpetrators to act, but it is important that they convince the rest of society that the violence was justified. The mainstream media has already been repeating key memes that are in place in their narrative, memes which are at hand to help this justification. It is noteworthy that in reporting the violence, most reports did not condemn the rioters or go into much detail about who they are. Once again, it is another case of very suspicious omission of facts. Given the ability of the internet to provide fast dispersal of content, and therefore forms of persuasion, this article cannot be ignored out of hand. It is undeniable that Peretti's meme factory has gone from providing a marketing and advertising tool to influencing social and political events. Even if we do not conclude there is a deliberate causation between the article and the riots, we can be sure that Buzzfeed has been one of the most aggressive players in pushing an agenda of political hostility. Taken in conjunction with the technology Buzzfeed uses to track and monitor people online, this means that their platform is creating havoc among society. This means we need to be more vigilant and better prepared to deal with the side effects of the echo chambers they have been helping to create.